borough, which is the area almost of London that I used to live in, was called Southwark. And I believe the latest population, and Southwark is one of the many boroughs of London, obviously, very London being very populated, densely populated. The population of Southwark, I think, is just over 300,000 people, and it's quite a small area. The population of Molise, which is obviously much larger than the borough, but still small, is under 300,000. So where I was living in this small area of London, there was more people than across the whole of our region of Molise. So it's quite sparsely populated, and like a lot of the sort of more southern regions of Italy, they are also sort of struggling with population replacement, and there's a lot of sort of people moving out, younger people moving out. Although we're now hopefully starting to see a trend back towards people moving down to the region as more people sort of discover it, especially younger people.
Like yourselves. I mean, you said that you've been living there
Exactly.
5 years, Scott. Is that right?
Yes, just under 5 years. We're coming up to our fifth year now. Really enjoyed it. Fantastic place to sort of to be. And we're sort of, as I mentioned, especially a lot of it, a younger Italians starting to see a move back to this region as well. So it's quite an exciting time for us also to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So, tell us a little bit about Molise wines, and well, tell us first, what is Molise all about? I mean, what drives it economically?
Agriculture will definitely be the main, I think, the primary sort of economic driver from the region. So, and if you drive around here, you will see that. It's like many Italian regions, it's absolutely stunning. But I think Molise is in some ways quite unique with its geography. It's got these wonderful sort of rolling hills and sort of deep sort of valleys. And as you drive along the valleys, you'll see that pretty much all of this is very fertile land that's used for grains, chickpeas, and all types of vegetables, tomatoes. We're very spoiled here for the quality of the food. And up the sides of the hills, these rolling hills, you'll see it fully all dotted with obviously olive trees and vineyards. So again, there's a sort of a real long history of agriculture throughout the region. And that's, I think, one of the primary sort of economic drivers. Although now as well, what we're trying to do is, because it's such an unspoiled region, it's, as I said, very sparsely populated. So it's considered very wild and untouched. We're getting a lot of tourism, people coming over to sort of with hiking and hopefully sort of visiting vineyards, wine tasting. We've got a lovely beach as well. So tourism is another sort of big economic driver for the region.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that Molise is the youngest region. Is that correct? And explain, I mean, it's not actually the youngest in the sense of what it's been doing for many,
No.
many years, but explain why it's the youngest.
So yeah, it's one of the big reasons I think the region's overlooked, or sort of always not particularly well known, is that it was overshadowed by the region it used to be part of, which is Abruzzo. So it used to be joined with Abruzzo, and it was actually, the region was Abruzzo e Molise, but often people left that last part out when they were sort of naming it. But in 1963, I think it was, there was a referendum, I suppose you'd call it, a vote to decide whether to actually split out from Abruzzo. And yeah, the region decided, yes, they wanted to break out, go on their own. And I believe that actually took place in 1970. So really the region itself is, it's just over 50 years old, which is compared to other regions sort of with their independence, making it one of the youngest regions. Obviously, as you said, it has its own sort of long history. It goes back all the way to I think the original people that and you sort of still see this, the Samnites who lived here back before even the Romans were here. I think they're very famous and very proud that they're one of the few people that managed to beat the Romans in a battle with the Samnites. So you hear a lot about that and the pride in people's voices here. But yes, obviously the traditions and the histories are very long, but the actual region and its independence makes it one of the youngest.
So why did the people of Molise want to split off? I mean, why was that an important issue?
I think there was a real drive to sort of come out of the shadow of Abruzzo. As I mentioned, it was I believe the official name was Abruzzo e Molise, but again, most people just knew it as Abruzzo. And again, there was, I think, a real, and you see this a lot, I think, in Italy. It's something that we've sort of noticed is having now lived here. I think in other countries, we sort of see there is a real sense of, especially coming from the UK, a sense of feeling part of a nation, and that sort of becomes the primary sort of sense of belonging. In Italy, it almost feels a bit more opposite. You feel a belonging to your town, your small village, and then to your region, and then to Italy as a sort of a sense of belonging. So I think there was still very much a feeling that they wanted to sort of get out from that shadow of Abruzzo to sort of reclaim their own history and sort of forge their own path forward. And once that sort of split did happen, we did see that actually, especially when you sort of speak to a lot of the winemakers, there was a real move, not just with wine, but also with culinary, with history, but with wine, it was a rediscovery of the grapes that they used to use,
The
like
indigenous
Tintilia.
grapes.
Exactly, yeah, the native grapes, and moving away. Well, not moving away, but more of a focus on those indigenous grapes instead of things like Montepulciano, which obviously Abruzzo is very well known for.
So, yeah, in fact, I've done, and I know that Molise Cuisine is a partner of yours, and I've done
Yep.
a few podcast episodes, wonderful ones, really when I started off as a podcaster, and I'm nearing 200 episodes now, and that was really back in the beginning. And we talked all about Molise, a little bit about the food and wine and so forth. And my understanding is so with the split, the Montepulciano wine, d'Abruzzo, and that was its official name, it could no longer be called that. So you had to come up with another name. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's it's. So we obviously market wine in the UK. We ship from Molise to the UK, and it's one of the problems we have is that originally because Molise used to be part of Abruzzo, Montepulciano still is a very popular grape here. I think it's one of the most planted red grapes in the region, and there's a lot of experience. The winemakers here have had generations of working with this grape, and they make some phenomenal wines with this variety. And I think not long after the split, and I'm trying to remember to get this the way around, they wanted to create a DOC, an IGP, specific for Montepulciano, and I think they called it Molise Montepulciano. I think that was the official name. And they applied for this and so on and sort of went through the official channels. And then I'd heard, and this is a story I'd heard when I initially heard, I thought there was then a big uproar from another wine region that says, oh, no, you can't possibly use that name. It will confuse people. And initially I thought when I heard this, oh, it'll be Abruzzo, because Abruzzo don't want anybody else using Montepulciano because that's what they're known for. And it's like, and it turns out it actually wasn't. It was the Montepulciano, which is very famous for wines. Ironically, the wines they're famous for are made with Sangiovese, not Montepulciano, just to make things more confusing, as it always is in Italy. And they raised a formal protest that said, no, people will get confused. They'll think it's our Montepulciano. So unfortunately, we had to call it Molise Rosso, which is not a terrible name, but it doesn't quite, for people who really love a good Montepulciano, it's not immediately obvious, especially to people who have maybe never heard of our region, that is a Montepulciano-based wine. It should be 95%, I think, red Montepulciano. So it's a tip for your listeners. If you do really love Montepulciano do Abruzzo, to also look out for Molise Rosso, because often the quality is as good, if not better, but the price is much lower because it doesn't have that same name recognition, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the Montepulciano is the Tuscan wine.
Correct, yeah.
Actually, I thought that the uproar was from Abruzzo that said, okay, we have this Montepulciano, you can't use that name now. But maybe it was a little bit of both, even. Who knows?
So did I, but apparently it was from Tuscany, which makes it even more sort of